Hey y'all, I'm Aeon.
And I'm the Lioness.
And you're listening to Box number 512 podcast.
Grown Black Trans Woman Talk. Changing your world one conversation at a time.
The show begins now. Hey y'all, I'm Aeon.
And I'm the Lioness.
And welcome to another installment of Box number 512 podcast, Grown Black Trans Women Talk. Let's get started with updates. I will go first. This weekend was pretty good. I was able to go spend some time with my mom in Baltimore. This was her weekend off. So got to spend some time with her over the weekend. And we went out to dinner with my cousin Teresa, who listens to the show. Shout out to you, Teresa.
Hi, cousin Teresa.
Also, I got my second vaccination on Monday. So I'm done with that for now. Only real side effects I had was the day after on Tuesday. My body was real sore and achy and no shade. It kind of felt like how I used to feel after I used to get out of chemo, where I was tired and achy and couldn't get out of bed. But today I'm feeling much better. I've been able to move around and work. So I'm just happy to be twice vaccinated, and I feel more confident about traveling and going out of town. I have a lot of trips planned in the following months. So I'm just happy to be SWV, honey, Sisters with the Vaccinations.
Yes. Welcome to the click, bitch.
Right. Work is fine. I'm still on the hustle, still trying to find a job, still trying to figure out where I'm going to live in the last part of this year. So it's still a process. Being an attorney is just, it's just a winding road, and you just have to be open to the possibilities. I was able to meet with another trans attorney today, and we were able to talk and just talk about our experiences. And they were a couple of years, they finished school a couple of years ahead of me, and we were just talking about how it's just a long winding road, and you don't know what you want to be doing in the next year or two, but you just have to have faith, and you just have to be open, and you have to keep moving. So that's what I am, that's what I'm looking forward to doing. Of course, we're recording this the day after the verdict in the Derek Chauvin case came as guilty on all counts. So yay for that. I hope he goes to prison for a long time. It was deserved in this case, but then right after the verdict, we found out about a young Black woman that was murdered by police in Columbus, Ohio. So it's just like, damn, we just never get a chance to like really catch our breath and really revel in our joy, because white supremacy is always taking that shit away from us. So just trying to balance that and trying to create space for my peace and my sanity. But I'm still here. I'm happy to be able to record this podcast, and this is really a creative output for me. Also, before I turn it over to my sis, if you're listening now, please make sure y'all go. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, which most of y'all do, make sure that you're rating us on Apple Podcasts and that you're writing comments on Apple Podcasts, because that helps other people find our show on Apple Podcasts. So we want to get those ratings up so we can get the word out there, so we can continue to expand our listenership and our base. And thank you all who have rated and wrote lovely comments so far. And now I'm going to turn it over to my sister Maya. So sis, what's your seeing?
No tea. Just, living, loving, and laughing at the bullshit. Greetings to the listeners. So the Lioness this week has been making some moves on a professional level that I will be able to reveal later. So I'm very excited about the burgeoning new opportunities that I feel like God has presented for me. Also, I have been having good conversations with my sorority sisters. So, like you go across this process. And this week I really have had the opportunity of having some wonderful, wonderful relationships with my new sorors. So shout out to the ladies of Kappa Alpha Sigma Sorority Incorporated. Also, I have been really, really trying to focus on like being more strategic in how I move this year. So I'm working on my vision board. I'm working on, trying to write and work on my daily affirmations. I bought like a special journal here, and it's just this like zodiac sign journal. I really just like that additional kind of astrological, metaphysical, spiritual tinge, because it's an astrological calendar, but it also has some other goodies in it. And it's just one of these, like, it's a journal that helps you. It's like an affirmation journal, and it helps you come up with your acknowledgments, the things you want to work on, your tasks and intentions, your desired goals. And so I'm just trying to be a little more direct in how I move this year. So we'll see. I am good for buying a teaching tool that I don't use, but we'll see how that works. I wanna work on that. So other than that, my mental has been okay. I have not been able to really watch the footage. I know I have a lot of friends that were very excited to live tweet and to want me to kind of commentate. I know you get that pull sometimes too, Brianna, as a content provider. People want to hear what you have to say on certain things, and particularly recently in these last few incidences, I have been sharing posts from other powerful people that I think articulate words better, because at this point for me, it's not that I can't say what I want to say, but there's so much emotion tied to listening, absorbing, receiving that information. And it really, really starts to really mess with me. So if I'm crying every day because I'm looking at this news footage every day, and I'm trying to follow along, and I'm hearing the disregard for human life, the excuses, the gaslighting, the systemic oppression, like I'm watching this play out in front of my face on TV, after a while it starts fucking with my psyche. And for me, I just have had to kind of take the approach of knowing what is going on, being present in the moment, but trying not to stay too in the news footage of it, because I feel like there's an amount of them trying to profit off of the salaciousness of some of our pain. Does that make sense? And so I have to make sure that am very cautious about how I receive news now, because it was causing a depression. And this last trial in particular, and particularly the recent incidences, including the teenage girl who got killed for calling the police, every time I see that, it evokes such an emotional reaction out of me that I'm thrown into grief. So I have to protect myself. So shout out to everyone out there that's like me, and we all grieving together. And yeah, that's me for the week, girl.
Thank you. So for today's episode, so a couple of episodes ago, we released an episode called Dysphoria on Top of Dysphoria, where I discussed my dating experience with a trans man that I wanted to date, and we were talking, but we ended up not working things out. If you want to know what happened, you can go back and listen to said episode. But when I put the episode out, I I was happy we did the episode because this is my story and this is my narrative. But I was definitely concerned about how it would be perceived in the trans masculine community, because I know that while we're generally supportive of each other, I know there can be tensions between our communities. And I never wanted to put the episode or tell my story in a way that was disrespectful or just dismissive of the trans masculine community and the trans masculine experience. So, in response to that episode, I actually had one of our listeners personally reach out to me, and we had a conversation about the episode. And the conversation that we had was so good that it just made sense for me to bring him onto our platform so we can share this conversation with our audience, and also so we can get a trans masculine perspective of what was really going on, and also what is the perspective of dealing with dysphoria from the other end of the spectrum, because we as trans women we can articulate or we can guess, but it's always great to just bring other voices into the room that can speak to that experience so that we can have a well-rounded conversation. So now we're going to actually bring that person on. Mateo, are you there?
I'm here.
Hey, welcome to our show, Mateo.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah.
So I guess to get started, if you could tell our audience your name and your pronouns and what you do.
Okay, so my name is Mateo Aiden James Nevels. Pronouns are they, them, theirs. Most people who know me just call me Teo. It's simpler that way because I have a ridiculously long name. So I just choose to be called Teo. What I do, let's see, I am a sex educator. I have a mental health background. I graduated from University of Michigan with a degree in clinical psychology and learning development. I also do some facilitating and trainings on trauma responses and healing. And I'm also a ex-sex worker. So I do a lot of conversations about reproductive justice, reproductive health, sex work with love and trauma and dating in a trans aspect or diaspora. So I do a lot of stuff. Just I would just say I'm just Teo. For anyone who knows me, they know I just do a lot of stuff.
Yes. So when you just give us like your natural reaction to when you heard the Dysphoria on top of Dysphoria episode.
Well, really fast, Brianna, before we get into that, I would like to know how long have you been a listener and why do you love our podcast?
Oh, you know what? Yeah. So I've been a listener since the day it first came out, episode 1. I'm always a person that just looks for podcasts to listen to. I love like Black trans podcasts. I listen to a bunch of other ones. So, naturally, I think I'm friends with both of y'all on Facebook. So when it popped up, I was like, let's go. For me, I love the podcast. I listen to it on the way to work. It usually comes out on the times when I'm driving. So it gives me a nice hour or two of break from sirens and horns and traffic to kind of decompress, get a couple of laugh ins, and just listen to two really dope people have dope conversations. So I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for doing it.
We love you too. So now, Brianna, what was your question? I'm sorry, dear. I just needed to get that little that little ego boost. Thank you so much.
So I guess just to start it off, like what was your reaction when you heard the Dysphoria on top of Dysphoria episode?
Yeah, so again, I was driving to work and my first reaction was like when I saw the title, I was like, I'm curious to see what this is. And then when I started driving, I, started to hear you, talk about like your experience with dating a trans masculine or a trans man. My first reaction was like, oh, here we go. It was kind of like a strap in for impact, obviously not knowing what way the conversation would go. I had good hopes for it, and while listening through the podcast, I was like, oh no. I was, obviously sitting there as a trans masculine person seething, and then also just really in awe of like the way that you handled the conversation, and just that's what made me reach out. Was like, okay, I want to make sure I reach out and say thank you for having the courage and using your voice in a way that was affirming to you, but also you made sure to not be obviously disrespectful and to be kind and to hide names, but you still told your experience the way that it showed up for you. So that made me smile. But originally I was like, okay. All right.
Can I ask you what triggered that reaction? I think that's important for viewers to notate. As trans people, a lot of times when our identities or people that represent identities are brought into spaces, we kind of get that cringe, even when it's other content providers discussing us. So what was that cringe? If you could explain what that felt, what was that about?
Yeah, so that cringe came from, I spend a lot of time around other trans people. I spend a lot of time around trans femme, trans women, trans men, trans masculine, non-binary folks. And we have a lot of these conversations, but typically when it's intercommunal conversations about dating, we hear a lot of stories of like things that just didn't go right. We hear a lot of different stories where, this person did X, Y, and Z and did all this. And then it's this arguing, this infighting conversation that happens where there isn't really a call in, there's more like a cancel. So when I heard that, I was like, wait a minute. But I'm aware of that because I'm a person that, I only date within community. I only date other trans women. So I've had those conversations before, and I'm always like, how's it gonna go? So that was, that was the reason why I kind of had that, ooh, moment. But I was still open to listening for sure because I'm like, hey, it's an experience that doesn't get talked about often, and we need to have a conversation about it.
Yes, thank you for answering that. What were you about to ask, Brianna?
So when we talked, I think when we talked prior to this episode, I believe we had a conversation about, I think I asked you, why is it like, no, I think I asked you, like, how does dysphoria show up for trans masculine folks? Like, I kind of wanted to like probe on the other side, like, just how it shows up for trans masculine folks, particularly in community with other with. Thank you for listening to another episode of Box Number 512 podcast, Grown Black Trans Women Talk.
And don't forget to become a patron on the Box Number 512 Patreon page, where we have all new exclusive content.
And also, don't forget to follow us on our social media, on our Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook pages. And also, become a subscriber on our YouTube page. Until next time, bye.